All right, and we're live and talking about shit that we don't talk about in business. Apparently, that we don't. Um, People generally know me, not really, not that I constantly do this. They know me as the unicorn guy or the purple unicorn is what I get a lot. Even though the company name is the professional unicorn, they see the purple, they remember the unicorn, and they put those two things together. Um, my joy generally is finding how we can have better experiences. That means better conversations, better group conversations, better events. That's what I kind of seek out, is how do we generally have better experiences and more realistic human experiences, which is why we talk about the shit we don't talk about, even though we all live it. But Max, before you and I start with our fun chat, can you tell people a little bit about you so they kind of get an idea of where a lot of this is coming from?
Sure. I am the founder of Max Wild Stories. It's a brand storytelling consultancy. I do content marketing strategy, copywriting, and I started my business in 2018. Took a break during the pandemic, but I've kind of been in the marketing landscape sphere at least since 2017. So just and it's changed a lot, and there's a lot of things that's like are just so like were just commonplace back then that are just absolute taboo now. It's just kind of interesting how this has shifted. About There's definitely things that you would not talk about like 7 years ago, and now it's kind of, I think, even LinkedIn is less fun. Like, we're on LinkedIn Live, right? Even LinkedIn has shifted and adapted. So it's kind of like just I help people who are service providers just kind of tell their story authentically without, I help people feel seen, not sold to. So I'm kind of at that authentic and empathetic place with marketing, as opposed to maybe,
Mhm.
just purely facts, logic, numbers. I'm like that emotional piece.
Yeah, I think speaking of LinkedIn and the work that you're doing right now, we're in a space where everybody's just being hammered over the head with this like connection, and then spam, 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 bio this thing. You need to sign up. I literally got one today where this woman was just like, "Hey, we've worked with over 100 speakers and gotten them over 500 paid gigs. Do you want to find our process and system, like, and buy into this?" Um, I am now at a point where instead of just ignoring it, because I know they're going to keep sending stuff, I said, "Hey, I'm no, thank you. I'm not interested. Does this kind of marketing and outreach, has that been actually working for you? Is this currently working? Are you getting clients off of this?" Um, I didn't go like the extra step because I just wanted to like see and test the waters, because the next step is, because it's not working on me. Like, the way that you did this, I would never want to work with you, even if you are an amazing company. Um, but and her response was, yes, it's very, very effective. We're getting so many great leads from all of this. And I kind of was like, sure. Can you speak to that a little? Because you're kind of being like, yeah, I think so many of us feel this, if we're like, oh, come on, people on LinkedIn, like, it's not, stop just hitting everybody, just whack-a-mole is what it feels like.
So speaking in the realm of shit we don't talk about,
Yeah.
I stopped going on LinkedIn. It was so bad. It was overstimulating. It was just inundated, and it was just like every time logging in, I'm I'm sure everyone who's listening to this probably has to do the same thing. Weed out the shitty messages, weed out the connection requests that are obviously think that I'm their ideal client. There's been times where people have sold my own service back to me. I'm like, did you read my profile? I do what you're talking about. It's like, and I think that spray and pray. I mean, I'm sure the numbers work out in the end for them, depending on how big their package is. So there has to be a reason why people keep doing it. Like, I have to assume that there's some sort of ROI that they can tie it back to. But I feel like it's also just a lot of wasted money, right? Like, I was just talking to somebody earlier today. I'm like, quantity is not as important as quality. It really is not, and especially when it comes to outreach, especially to cold outreach. Cold
Mhm.
outreach, you should be researching that person. You should be trying to find commonalities, see if you have people in common, like see what events they maybe go to, either virtually or in person. Like you can do cold outreach right. I really do think that. I don't personally do cold outreach myself, very, very typically. Um, but I think there's a way to do it correctly, and that's not it. and we all hate it. Everyone on
Mhm.
LinkedIn bitches about it, like constantly. Like, let's. So it's like you're ruining the like you. I love how you talked about building a better experience because oh my god, right? Like LinkedIn is being ruined. This experience on LinkedIn is ruining the platform for me. Like at least for me, and maybe for other people. I can't only assume other people. Definitely, throw it up in the comments if you actually are like, yeah, this is just, and it's I chalk up a lot of that honestly to the kind of the death knell of Twitter because there's a lot of toxicity on Twitter and there's just a lot of just overall just I don't want to say filler, but it's like something like that. And I feel like so many people like probably jumped ship and came over to LinkedIn. And I don't know I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I feel like since that time, there's definitely been a shift and not necessarily for the better in some ways.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think there is also not to blame it for this, but just the reality is AI and automation has just sprung up so much more and more and more, and these kind of cold outreaches are some of the easiest things to automate.
Yes.
So then it's more and more people are doing it, more and more noise, and we're going to start seeing that in other aspects as well, where there's just going to be more and more noise. I heard a really great metaphor for it, and this is to the point of like personal branding and storytelling, why it's so important. Is we're going to get to a point pretty soon, in probably a few years, of where it's almost going to be like a fog has set over with the amount of noise that you get from AI content and those kinds of things. And if you have a personal brand, if you had a personal brand and people recognize it, you're like an airplane that's flying above it. You're good. People will see you. They'll recognize you. But everybody else is going to realize that they're kind of a grounded plane that can't take off because of the fog, because you just can't get through all of that noise to create your own personal brand. And so even though some have been yelling about personal branding from the beginning, it is becoming more and more important than ever. And unfortunately, the window is also closing.
Yeah, I definitely think that people underscore, again, this is a conversation I had recently. People underscore how important timing is to business success. You can have the right idea, you can have the right premise, the right positioning, and you can be at the wrong time. Either too early, too late, what have you. And it's not the idea necessarily is wrong. I mean, obviously, you can never fully test it in that way. Like, you can go back and be like, I'm going to go back in time, But I think that so many of the people who are big names on also like on social media platforms or in email marketing or all in these channels, they're selling you a process. I'm not saying the process is wrong, but they're successful because of when they enter that market, that platform, that they got in when there was not nearly as much competition. And people need to start just owning that and saying it's not that my process is wrong, but what took me 6 months may take you 3 years. And be real about it. Be real about how long that success pathway takes. Because yes, it swings widely, but I think that we just need to be like, hey, yeah, I was on Twitter back when XYZ. Like, you cannot start something on something like X or Twitter now and expect to get success like people were getting 5, 10 years ago. It's just not going to happen. So
Yeah.
I think that's the piece of it. I think you hit that really well. And then going back to the AI automation, because I do so much of the storytelling, personal branding, and like the authority building, if you're like leaning on AI to do so much of that, you're just showing that you're just like you're the Wonder Bread of your industry. You're just bland. You're generic. Like even if it's not a pitch, even if it's a blog, or even if it's a LinkedIn post or social media, it's the average of everything about that topic.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, yeah, if you want to be average, go ahead and do that. But average is not going to cut it, and it hasn't cut it for a long time, and it certainly isn't anymore. So that's the problem. Is yes, people are doing that with AI automation. They're doing that with their content, their outreach, all of these little marketing touch points, and it's freaking boring. It's boring, and it's just being tuned out. Just like we learned to tune out with advertisements on TV.
Yeah. No, absolutely. By the way, we're also getting a little bit of like cutting in and out of your mic. So just double check. Maybe you need to turn off the like the noise cancellation or something like that in the settings. But in the meantime, I'm just gonna riff off of that entire thing because for the people listening, what Max said about AI and being kind of the general average, and you're being the wonder bread of it all, if that's how you're doing it for the branding. It's because that is now accessible to anybody and everybody else to do. That's kind of the point. What AI is doing is it's a rising tide where everybody gets to a certain level, and that means that potentially you now have to, in a way, work even harder. But in a way, I don't think either one of us is saying don't use AI. It's just don't rely on AI for everything, because if everything in your business is run by AI, guess what? You're not running a business. AI is running the business. It's not. You're going to be easily replaced.
I have a clause in my contracts with my clients about this is the specific use cases that I personally use AI. I do all the writing myself or through the words of my clients, like when I interview them. But AI is great for, hey, I took like transcribing your meetings. AI is great for taking transcripts and formatting them in another way, or taking, like, let's say I wrote a long like article and, hey, break this up into social media posts, taking my words or your words, if you're watching this, and just like optimizing, editing, formatting, like doing all the other things that a human being probably does not have to do. Like I run it through AI to optimize for SEO or to help me figure out like good titles and headlines, or at least help me brainstorm some of that. There's definitely use cases for it, but at the end of the day, the voice needs to come from you instead of AI generating your voice. It can take
Yeah.
that and use it in other ways. But yeah, that's my preferred way in that marketing process. And there's there's other use cases outside of that marketing sphere, but that's where I find that it saves me a lot of time.
Yeah. I want to bring it to one thing, and then I know we're going to be getting to talking about courses and all that fun jazz. But the amount of YouTube videos that I have actually watched, there's probably even way more out there with all these thumbnails that are like, build an AI business that generates 10K a month in 24 hours, or like those kinds of, and you watch it, and in a way, objectively, you're like, oh, okay, like I understand why this makes sense. But when you actually put it into practice, bullshit. Nope, absolutely not. And it's the similar thing of where people go, oh, are you struggling to make SEO video descriptions and all that kind of stuff for your YouTube videos? Just use AI. Guess what? If your video sucks, you can have the best SEO. It doesn't matter. Like that's not the piece that's going to immediately make it go, viral and be amazing. Just like as a final point for me, the shit we don't talk about, I think, nearly enough is too many people are focused on this virality aspect, that I need to have the right hashtags, I need to have the right SEO on my website, and not enough people focus on the fact that your stuff sucks. It just is bad. That's why people don't like it. That's why people don't go for it. And the people that keep on telling you a pat on the back of like, oh, it's so great, it's so great. No, they don't want to ruin the relationship. They don't want to rock the boat, and they're just telling you that it's bad. The vast majority of things that we do are not good, with love. But yeah.
I feel like we all have to start somewhere in that way. That's where the repetitions, I think, come into
Yeah.
it. So yeah, like everybody's first podcast, everyone's first YouTube sucks. Like I could definitely point to some things where I'm like embarrassed. I think that is, you kind of have to in some ways get over that hump of what you want it to be and what it is are not the same thing. And that's okay. You will hit that. So Godin talks kind of about that in the dip. I think that's just a good way to think about that process, because it is a process. But yeah, virality is not how you build a business. I tell people all the time, if you're a business owner, you need to not be using the strategies that content creators and influencers are using, because they're getting paid by the view, they're getting paid by the minute, they get paid by likes and follows and all of those things. Like that's how they make their brand deals, that's how they make their money. But I do not. I have gone viral, a couple of times across 2 different businesses and got 0 clients from it, because what is viral is not necessarily what is going to make customers go to your website. You need to be thinking, more people need to start working backwards. Instead of thinking about the content they're trying to create, they need to think about the outcome that they want. People to go back to the website, email list, event, like this live, like attending that, like whatever it is, and then be like, what content supports that? Instead of how do I go viral? How do I make people watch this? Because even if the quality is not amazing, as long as you can lead that free content or that content to something that is paid, either A, you're going to get leads. Like even when my YouTube videos suck, I still get leads. Because the content, like again, the editing isn't amazing. There's times where I haven't even edited and just put it on YouTube because I'm like, I don't got time to edit it. But it's, it's still, the content was like, here's how to, this is leading to a workshop I'm doing, or this is leading to something else. And I think that is the biggest thing that people need to be talking about more, is stop focusing on the free content. Free content, and that's what I do for a living. Okay, this is shit I probably maybe shouldn't be talking about. I'm taking myself out of a job, but like this is what I do with clients, is I sit and work backwards. We don't need to be getting viral. We don't need to be worrying about the follower counts. We do not need to be worrying about those things. We need to be like thinking about it from a business owner perspective, not an influencer perspective.
Yeah. No, I love that idea of it. I would also add, and I think you're basically saying this, there's also an aspect of patience, because I think the reason people are lured towards virality is they're like, oh, I could make a post and millions of people are going to see it. I don't want to be famous immediately. And it's like, probably not. But doing the hard work slowly over a long period of time, none of us want to hear that that's what it takes. And yet everybody says that's exactly what it takes. To just do it slowly with that. I wanted to go back to something that you said, in terms of the content converting. When I say it sucks, I want to be clear. Like, sure, some people can look at it and they're like, oh, it's not professionally filmed. Doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't have to be professionally filmed. More of the time, my problem is not even with the filming, even though I've done a lot of stuff with videos and I like video. It's with the things people are talking about. I'm like, you're saying such a basic thing, and you're not saying it in any different way than 100,000 other people have said it. So why would I see this as valuable? Now, if people say, but I have nothing new to say, I'm like, okay, you may not have a new idea to say, but you might say it in a different way. And I always love this example. If you have a significant other, you may have told them something again and again and again. And then some like friend or some like cashier says the same freaking thing. And they're like, oh my goodness, you're so right. And you go, I've been telling you this for years. Yeah. You can be that person. You could be that person, but that's the thing, is you have to say it somehow differently to different people, and not just saying the same shit to the same people all of the time in the same exact ways.
That's such a good point. Oh my gosh. I talk about that myself, because I did go to marketing school, and I took a class on like messaging, campaign planning. And it was the first time somebody like broke it down to be like, as a sender, you think you have all of the control, but you do not. The person who's receiving the message, and this goes across anything, communication, marketing, what have you, they have all the power in that scenario, because they have to be, let's just say it's something that requires concentration. They have to be well rested, well fed. You know what I mean? Like they have to have nothing else emotionally going on, or or maybe they do, and this is like you're tapping into that emotional aspect that they need to hear right now. Like that's the thing, is the time, like we just talked about earlier, the timing is more important. And it comes to marketing as well, like not even just business models or business ideas. It's like the marketing, that timing might just be, like you said, exactly right for that person, because that customer journey aspect of it, of people are not always in that high intent, or it's not on the top of their mind yet, or it's not until they're like actively looking for a solution where you may come in at that right time, like, and so there's so much of
Yeah.
that aspect that doesn't get talked about a lot about, like, trying to, like, we talk about voice customer, we talk about like customer empathy and, IC profiles and all those stuff, which I have my own beef with. But it's just like, what is that like moment for them where they're now like in that receptive, they're ready to receive that message, they're ready to receive that marketing or content or whatever. And understanding that is, I think, what will elevate. Like you said, people may not necessarily have to work harder, like you were saying, but if you can elevate that content and get it to that other level and recognize what moments you can tap into with them, I think you're going to be it's going to be more impactful.
Yeah. No, I agreed. I think frequently, if people are thinking of examples, you think of motivational speakers, and like these various clips that might go around. They're like older, like your Zig Ziglars, your not to only include white dudes, cis white dudes into the conversation of motivational speaking, but people use those clips all the time. They use the audios and whatever it may be. It may not be a visually impactful clip, but because the words are there, because the way it was delivered, like that's so. I think that people just think of value. The other piece that I find so many business owners that will say, yeah, I deliver value because I let people get on a call with me. I'm like, no, that's not how they see it. I loved your point about they're in control, the receiver's in control. If I'm just seeing yet another ad of somebody telling me that I need to call them if I need insurance help, that's not going to make me call them. There's a reason all the insurance companies are doing their advertising as more so entertaining, fun skits, because you're more likely to watch. And then when you're really, really in need, you're like, I've been seeing that Geico commercial. Oh, I really like Flo from Progressive. I feel like those people can take care of me. It's the same product at the end. It's not any different. This is branding. We're literally talking about branding. I wanted to ask you this, however, because I know my opinions on it, but I want you to chime in. Being in marketing, when we talk to business owners and we're like, okay, marketing, I wouldn't say that marketing is necessarily very complicated. It can be very simple, but not easy. And it can be a bit unfair when we're like, oh yeah, you just need to do this. You just need to have about 2 or 3 other full-time jobs in marketing for your business to be able to do all of these things successfully. I mean, that's why there's so many marketers out there. Can you talk a little bit about this, that concept of how much it actually really takes for you to effectively market your business if you were to do it yourself? Because some people think, oh, I'm just going to put a prompt into ChatGPT. I'm going to spend 30 minutes on my marketing a week. And I'm like, that's not going to cut it.
So you really, it's really interesting because I was, we all have to DIY at some point. However, you get to this when you're inside your business, you don't really see the angles like that you should be taking. So that can sometimes just working, especially with service providers, working with clients over and over again, answering the same questions over and over again. And you're like, oh yeah, that makes content. That takes like months of repetition right there, just from being like, oh, I'm getting the same questions on discovery calls, or oh, I'm getting the same questions all the time from people, or you don't know why somebody didn't go with you versus, so there's a lot of that that's like there's that guesswork into it, and I think that's where it becomes very easy to overthink. So from that point of view of like the strategy and knowing what to say and knowing the messaging, that can take, I know people who've taken 3 years, 6 months, or what have you, just developing the elevator pitch, just developing like the tagline, just developing the message. And then let's say you have that, let's say you do, go to me or somebody and you get that and you take it back and you DIY it. Now you suddenly have to be, a videographer, because video is non-negotiable now. You have to know how to video edit, which is my bane of my entire existence. Be a designer. I'm a writer. I had to teach myself design, and man, my old don't go down to the bottom of my Canva account, because those are ugly. Okay, and they are not good. And I had to teach myself, and it was repetition. It was a lot of Like even go down to the bottom of my Instagram, you can kind of almost see the evolution of where I was 4 years ago versus now, and that's a skill set, like I said, I'm not a designer, so I definitely, have a lot of respect for those folks. But like so you got to be a copywriter, a designer, a videographer, video editor, and that's not counting the project management piece of it, right? And actually like formatting and scheduling everything. So like that's, and then doing your SEO keyword research. There's like I can easily think of if I were to subcontract every single piece of what I do, it'd probably be a good 8 to 10 people, to be honest, easily, And I think that's why so many people want a generalist, and I get why, because you don't want to have to manage so many different people, but they're not going to be as good as somebody who does that's all they do is video, or that's all they do is podcast producing, and that's all they do. They're just not going to be, and they're not going to be able to keep up with because this is also a rapidly changing marketplace. So like as far as the technology and the platforms and the algorithms and all of that pieces of like what's performing well and what's not, like that stuff is almost a full-time job in and of itself, just to keep up with those changes. Like I do it, again, because I like learning, so I'm in a good field for that. But
Yeah.
if you're a business owner, you do not have time to also keep up on trends and keep up on like what's happening or what's coming, or how, let's say, SEO has changed since AI and all of these things. Like that's a lot. That is so much. I do not wish that on anyone, really, because it's just if it were not part of my delivery, I wouldn't be able to have time to do a lot of that stuff either, right? So it's a lot. And I think that's, we don't think of it as separate roles. We're like, because when you are a solo person, you are in all the hats anyways. You're the customer service, you're the salesman, you're the, like I said, the project manager, operations manager, whatever you want to call it. You are HR, or all of those things. So it's just commonplace. But it's like, yeah, but when you have a set amount of hours, it's like, how much can you reasonably devote to the marketing and sales versus the delivery or whatever you need to do to sell products? You kind of have to balance it so you're not in the feast or famine. But when you only have like 10 hours, let's say, to devote to marketing, it's like, how are you going to spend that so it's impactful for you?
I love. Well, let's actually follow with that. This idea of if you only have 10 hours, or a quote that really came up for me several years ago that has just been applicable to business, life, and any big or small thing it's been applicable to is the concepts are few, but the methods are many. And most of the time we're being sold methods. And like, you need to be doing this, you need to be on Snapchat, you need to be on LinkedIn, you should definitely have a podcast. But also don't forget to have a newsletter, because newsletters are big on LinkedIn right now. Are you writing a blog yet? Why not? You're missing out. Too many methods. The main concept of marketing really ends up being communication. Are you telling people what you're doing? Done. That's it. That's effectively, that's all you're trying to do in marketing. Ideally, they're the people that would be interested in buying. Ideally, you're communicating to them in the way they want to hear from you. Yes. Well, when it comes down to it, are you doing the main thing? And I think if you have 10 hours with everything that we just said, I think it's pick one thing. Do not do shitty email marketing, shitty social media, shitty newsletters. Do one thing and do it very, very well. Be patient as it grows over time. And that's the thing that's really going to pay off, especially if you're a solo. The cool thing about being a solo is if you're willing to do it, I think, do what you like doing in terms of the way you like to communicate. We talked about like value, if things suck or don't suck. What I like to say is, for videos, if you wouldn't watch it, they wouldn't either. Like, if you made a shitty video that you wouldn't watch because it doesn't share a good enough piece of information, or it doesn't look that interesting, whatever that value proposition is, they wouldn't either. If you write a post that you're like, what's the point of this? And one tiny thing, and then I want to hear your thoughts about this thing of like focusing in on one thing, and like what do you think about that, and where people might want to focus maybe. The one final thing is, and I just completely lost my one final thing. as so frequently happens. I'm just going to kick it off to you. I'm going to remember it, and we're going to go back
You'll
to
remember as I talk. I almost guarantee it. So that's such a good point, because like no one wants to half-ass a bunch of things, because I think that also makes us feel like we're not keeping up. I would say don't worry about things that are meant for like scaling as much. Like you don't necessarily have to do a bunch of social media, like, because that's a numbers game. We talked about it, and it works out if you have enough like followers, right? Most of us are not starting from 10K or whatever, you're starting from before. So to kind of talk about how I'm talking to you right now, the last 2 or 3 years, have set conversation goals for myself of how many times I'm going to engage in a conversation with people. Not necessarily a discovery call, not necessarily a sales call, no pitching, just getting to know people in my industry, in my city, people who I think are just doing cool shit, just all of that. And for me, like, that is not scalable. Like, that is literally not scalable. However, that deep relationship is the good basis and foundation, especially if you don't need that many customers or clients. Like if you are more, high end, or you're, a service provider who you only could take on so many people anyway. I think that the relationship piece is so important. And that can also help you to kind of springboard into maybe doing a little bit more things that will, like podcast interviews or things that will eventually scale. Like, but to me, like having that, like I focus on networking, and I focus on conversations, like individual conversations after networking. And that has worked very well for me. And I think that if you want to have that ongoing content, I think something like a LinkedIn Live, like a live stream, you don't have to script it. Like I said, go backwards, think about what you're trying to achieve or talk about this month. I like to do it in monthly or weekly themes for for myself. And then just pop on and have a few questions, or let people ask you questions, and then just kind of just riff. And you can transcribe that later. Again, thank you, AI. And that can be something later. You don't necessarily have to do anything with that now. But I take those videos and I put them in Google Drive. And when I'm ready to maybe do something with them, maybe repurpose into a reel, maybe repurpose into, a newsletter, whatever it is, that's a library that you're creating. And it really only takes you, let's say, 30 to 60 minutes, like a week. So I think if you're wanting to do content, and even before video was super big, I would voice type my email newsletters into like my notes app. And that would take me 15 minutes to write an email newsletter. So like, just my thought process is what's the simplest way you can do what you need to do? And the platform is not necessarily the biggest deal about that. Like, if I once a week share like my expertise, share my thoughts, share my perspective, do the buyer education, all of those different things. But what's the simplest way to do that? Is it, like I said, talking into Google Drive or into your phone for 15 minutes for a newsletter or article or what have you, and let AI, again, it's your words. Now you're just letting AI like format it, because we talk differently than we would write. So again, having it clean it up is totally a great use case for that. Or like I said, live stream, you just pop on, and just kind of talk through a topic, So I think that there's a couple of ways to just be like, what's the minute, like, just like developers are like, what's my minimum viable product? What is your minimum viable marketing? And so for me, the active things that I'm doing is the more relationship building, but also on the content creation. Don't take the pressure off. There's no editing a live stream. It's unscripted. People know that, so you don't have to have, that's a whole half of the video creation process you don't have to mess with. So I think that's another piece of it, is just thinking through and again, video is very repurposable. So if you're going to do it, I probably would do live stream, because again, you can take that later. And I think that's another piece of it, that people think that everything has to go out all at the same time. Like if I'm writing a post on LinkedIn, it also needs to be on Instagram, and it also needs to be on Facebook. And I don't really do that. Like if something's in my heart and I feel like I'm pulled to LinkedIn to write about it, for a little bit, like I don't go rush over and put it on everything else. Sometimes I will, depending, but very, very rarely, because I'm like, I'll just use that later, when I have a good post that maybe that can be repurposed into another caption or something. But like, I'm not putting all the pressure to put it all out at once. It's just you build yourself
Yeah.
a library.
I love that. I love that as a point, because I almost, two things that I want to say. I absolutely agree with the use of AI in a lot of this stuff and how you can help repurpose a lot of it. But the second thing, well, if people are interested, here's my quick process, but I love video. So this is the premise of where I was also saying I like doing this, therefore it makes it easy for me, and it made it easy for me with a lot of the automation. I film a 5 to 10 minute YouTube video. That 5 to 10 minute YouTube video is then transcribed. I have a program that cuts it up into short clips and can then schedule it out as well. It's called Opus Clip. If any of you want to use it, it's relatively affordable. And then what I do is I throw the transcript into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT gives me the description, the tags for YouTube, all that kind of stuff. Where I'm like, I don't want to think about it. There you go. And then I make it give me a LinkedIn post describing the big long video as well. Done. I tell it to use my words. I give it the transcript, and it writes it in my voice with all of that, exactly like Max said. Now, this is the part that I think is important and kind of scary for a lot of us to do. I used to get way more views. I used to spend way more time on all of this. I would make each individual short clip myself. I would write all the hashtags and descriptions myself. It took so much time and so much stress, and I had to take a step back. So my marketing isn't, my social media marketing in that sense is not nearly as effective as it used to be, but it takes about 10 times less of my emotional energy and everything. And I don't think we talk about this enough. Of a lot of times, your answer is not more, your answer is actually less. Like, you need to step way back, as opposed to keep on adding more shit to your plate that you need to be doing.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to like whether or not to use AI in your process, I always think to myself, does a human being really need to be the one to do this? Like, is there certain things that like needs the relationship, the emotion, the judgment, the discipline, like the discernment? There's certain things that we have as human beings, any human being, that AI cannot. AI does not have discernment. It does not learn from mistakes. Like it does not have that. But like choosing hashtags, do I really like that's a great example that you used. Do I really have to be the one to choose which hashtags? No, I really think that's something that a robot can do, and it'll be fine. So I think that for me, whenever I'm like, I will say I do choose for clients and for myself clips. I use Descript, Descript. It's similar to Opus Clip, but it's kind of more meant for video editing for long form as well, and it just happens to also clip out shorter video, which is why I use it. But I did Opus Clip once for a client, and I didn't really like what came out, and so I did it myself, and it was about. It took a little bit longer, but I think like I liked what came out of it a bit more. But you kind of, like you said, it's weighing it.
Yeah.
And I used Descript often enough that it didn't really feel like it, like you were kind of saying about your video process. I've used it enough that it didn't take me that long, because all I was doing was highlighting, because Descript is text based. So you just highlight the paragraph I really liked as a reel and just clipped it and added it to its own video now. Clipped it. So I did that and so it didn't take me that long. But you kind of, like I said, you have to kind of weigh the learning curve for some of these tools as well.
Yeah.
That's part of it that people don't take into account. Yeah, things might take you 10 times as long at first, right? But once you get into a rhythm, or again when to bring in AI or when to offload it to maybe like a video editor or whoever, then you can do a lot more, and you can speed it up, or you can batch it. I think batching is a great way to just get very used to and like speeding up your learning curve. If you're doing it one at a time every week, that means that you're kind of having to get back in the groove every single week with it. But, if you're doing something like pre-recorded or scripted, like edit them all at once, because you'll be in that editing flow and you're going to be faster. And so that's what I've noticed for myself is if I'm doing it one at a time, it's like pulling teeth.
Yeah. It's miserable. Yeah, for sure. And I think that what we've kind of harped on maybe already plenty is also just understand the trade-offs. Like, yes, would it be better if you devoted an entire day to making one video and it was edited and you spend a whole bunch of money on all these other B-rolls and all? Yeah. But do you have time for that? Do you have the time and the resources to be able to do that? Probably not. Probably like the vast majority of the solopreneurs don't necessarily have time for that. So it's with that reality. I want to come back to something that you mentioned several times, and I really also like on these lives, I like talking about the reality of it. You said relationship building. 9 out of 10, if not more, of business owners that I speak to, especially small business owners, when I ask them where the majority of their clients and leads tend to come from, they go referrals, which that immediately means to me relationship. Because otherwise, how would they refer you? Either they were a previous client, either they know you, whatever it might be. And people go, oh, okay, got it. Relationship building. They jump on networking events, places like Alignable, where they'll just like cycle through a bunch of people. And then they're like, I'm relationship building. My usual immediate thing is I'm like, are you following up? And they're like, yeah, but they're not the right fit. I'm like, you truly don't know who and who is not a right fit after talking to them for 7 minutes. Like there are some, but I guarantee probably half of the people that you discarded could have actually turned into referral partners and clients. You just didn't build the relationship long enough. Can you talk about the reality of like building the relationship? We kind of have a transactional feeling sometimes of, well, I introduced them to somebody, they never introduced me, so I'm never going to continue that relationship. Can we talk about what it actually really takes today?
So I think you're so right about like just writing people off. I think that happens quite a lot. I think you're right about, we need to look beyond transactional. I think of it more in the basis of karma. I call it business karma, because the people who I connect and the people who I refer, or again, like all of these different aspects, it comes back to me, and it doesn't always come back to me right away. It doesn't always. It may not be that exact person, but no, like building those relationships has gotten me into the right rooms that I probably did not have access to had I not been building that relationship, knowing that person was never going to hire me, but they knew enough people who could hire me. And so you have to think beyond the person in front of you. Every time you're talking to somebody and their entire network you can tap into. So you need to think of it more of like a web. And I definitely got a bit of this from just Kalaki talks a lot about relationship building, deeper business community, but of just like of just just talking to somebody and just seeing who they know. And I will say that even I've even witnessed it myself of people who have never bought from a mentor of mine, but was referring people. So yeah, they never bought. They were never a client, and you could have easily written them off, but so.
Yeah, the interesting there to kind of as we're finishing up to bring it full circle in a way for me as well. This is the other thing that I find that especially in networking, that I notice is the absence of value. Is a lot of times when people say like, oh, this is what I do and you should absolutely hire me because I'm like amazing and it's great. Like, don't you need a website? Like, I've looked at your website. It's not very, very good. And I'm like, okay, first of all, you don't know what I use my website for. Like me personally, I don't really use my website. It's there because people ask for a website, but I don't tend to even use that website. And you get a lot of this, like, I can fix everything for you. The thing I hate is where people say, we have the highest quality blank. You're a small business. There's literally no way you could have the highest quality of anything. Like with love, that's just the reality of it. You don't have the resources for it to truly be that high. So I'm bringing it back to this idea of value and the relationship building, as a lot of times people think that they are providing value for a relationship and they're really not. They're just sitting there waiting to take, and they're not actually building, because value, and this was the thing that I forgot, and this is a great place to bring it back. Value can also be entertainment. Value can be a genuine human being to have a conversation with and say, that sucks. That's hard. That can be valuable. We keep on thinking that when we say business and value and relationships and value, it has to be along the side of the service or product that we sell, and it does not have to be that way. Thoughts as we close off that whole discussion?
Goodness. Yeah, I think that there's two things there. I think that I kind of want to talk about from the value standpoint. And this is somebody who, like, I do value proposition design, like positioning and messaging with so many people. So many people think, oh, it's my quality or my integrity or my customer service. Like, how many people can freaking say that? It doesn't mean anything. How many pizza places say on their pizza place that they're the best pizza in town? They can't all be, okay? That's just not how that works. That's not how superlatives work. And then also from, like, even if it's something that people aren't replicating now, if it's something technology based, you're not only going to have that little corner for 3 to 6 months before somebody else finds a way to replicate that technology of yours. So, like, that's another piece of it is whatever you're standing by, whatever your claim is, whatever your positioning is for your business, it needs to be truly something that only you can say. And that's why I think storytelling is so important, because there's lots of copywriters. There's lots of, content marketing people. Like, I'm not going to pretend that I'm, like, the only one. But how many of them are non-binary, are neurodivergent, were domestic violence survivors, who used to be a nurse for 10 years and trained doctors how to use electronic charting software. Like there's so many parts of my journey that, like, all of those things cannot be in another person. They cannot be replicated. I cannot be replicated. My story cannot be replicated. So that's, I think, the piece of, like, when you are saying something, make sure that it's something that only you can say, because otherwise, like you said, I think it's a turnoff, and I think it breaks trust. Or you just get an eye roll. I'm just like, okay, yeah, you're the best pizza in town. Okay, like it's just meaningless. It's just filler. So from that perspective, I think that's an important thing about, like, just being an actual valuable when you're bringing that forward. But from the relationship building standpoint, oh my gosh, what was I going to say? See, now I forgot something.
I to add to that point, because you really made me is, yes, people do that, and then they end up basically saying, when you go, well, who would you work with? Who's a good client? And they're like, oh, I can work with anyone. Anyone is a good client. And you're like, no. And I think my big kind of culmination of everything we've sort of discussed during this. Did you wait before I do that? Did you get your second thing back? No. All right. The kind of full wrap up is, you have a finite amount of time. You have a finite amount of resources. You cannot do all of it all at once. Pick something very, very specific in terms of the marketing and things that we talked about that you're actually able to do, where you're going to be able to deliver value unlike anybody else. It doesn't have to be better. It has to be better for a very specific person that would value that thing being better. Just like you said, like your experience with nursing, that could be meaningless to certain individuals, and to some, they're like, oh my goodness, she's going to get my business. She's going to totally understand. They're going to totally understand. I'm sorry. And with that, you have your very specific thing that you're going after. You have your story, and thus your story is going to resonate with certain people and not everyone. So you're focused in more. So with that, add the thing that you remembered. I think that's what you're pointing at.
I think that there is one thing that we can use to wrap it up, is about the relationship building piece. Being a solopreneur, being an entrepreneur is very isolating. We're on our own all the time. So for me, it's like you said, when you talk about entertainment, I almost like, it's also friendship. Like, you can make friends in business. I have been a member of communities here in Kansas City that the relationship was so deep. I invited these people to my baby shower. Like, they helped me move. They helped me, like, when I got divorced, they, like, helped me, like, would give me dishes and things when I was starting over. Like, you cannot just see it behind, oh, they're not making me money, because that to me is just not a way to live life, period, much less be in business that way. Like, these are people that like can legitimately be your friends and be those people that are going on the journey with you. And I think, again, that's where the storytelling comes into it, because that's how we connect with each other. And so when you tell each other stories to each other, you know, whether it's business, whether it's like clients or what have you, like, it's that connection piece that is going to, again, have an ROI at some point, but it doesn't necessarily have to have a very tangible ROI for it to be worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of something I said earlier today, and I've said this many, many times in general. It's just when it comes down to it, it's business is humans buying from humans. The smaller the business, the truer the statement. When it comes down to it. So with that, maybe the answer is having a better experience. Branding, self-plug, yay. With that, everybody, I hope that was enjoyable. Put out in the comments, even if you're watching the replay afterwards, what are some shit that you feel that we don't talk about in business? Maybe it's along these topics, maybe something else. And then potentially that can be brought up further, because there's so much other stuff we didn't even get to touch on, that there is so much bullshit all around that we kind of talk about, but not very publicly. All right. With that, we bid you adieu.